Financial update from St. Mary Parish, including the school. St. Mary Parish's financial status is a mixed bag. The highlights from the 2019-2020 fiscal year are as follows. Essentially, revenues were flat across the parish. The church revenues were up by 12.7%, and I'll explain that a little more down below. The school revenues were down by 6.6%, but most of that was due to lower enrollment. We had a very small 8th grade class and the COVID shutdown. COVID shutdown cut off revenues in March through May. The largest of those losses was income from Cougar Care. Total expenses were up from last year by 4.5%. The church expenses were the culprit. And most of that 18.5% increase from the previous year was due to the purchase of the Monteith house. There's a $66,000 difference between selling the red house and purchasing the Monteith house. Capital improvements also added to that. We did more capital improvements in this past fiscal year than the prior fiscal year. School expenses were less by 1.6%. So we ended the year over the whole parish with a deficit of $154,000, mostly due to that purchase of the house and capital improvements. So weekly offerings make up the biggest amount of the church revenues that went up. Last year, we focused on the steady but slightly declining donations, weekly offerings over the prior many years. Unfortunately, our expenses, especially for capital improvements, are continuing to go up. So we explained that last year, and we did a parish ask in November, asking everyone if you could bump up your weekly donations. It will help us to get back to where we need to be. Parishioners answered that call, and we were up significantly between November and the beginning of March. Once COVID hit in mid-March, the shutdown part of it, our donations plummeted during the rest of the fiscal year from mid-March through June. Overall, that increase that we had in those months from November into March still allowed us to see a decent year. And it allowed us to start spending money on capital improvements that were necessary. The total parish families increased slightly. Of these, only 62% are actively giving though. And as noted above, the school enrollment decreased by 2%. Looking at income sources for St. Mary, you'll notice that more than 50% is tuition for the school, our largest ministry. There's also other income for the school, which is mostly student activities, field trips, and also donations to the annual fund. You'll see two other small slices of other church income and festival and other fundraising. The church 29%, although it looks smaller in comparison to the rest, it pays all the parish bills, capital improvements, and a substantial subsidy to the school. The income trend for the last 7 years is essentially flat for church revenue, school revenue, and the overall. St. Mary's School tuition is very competitive, below all of our neighboring parishes. St. Mary's School Annual Fund is an integral part of covering our costs as well as creating a reserve to target improvements for the future. With an increased focus on promotion of this fund, last year we were able to not only increase the donation amounts, but also the number of gifts and the family participation rate. St. Mary's School is the largest ministry of our parish. As you can see, year after year, the parish has subsidized a portion of the school. The trend is getting better from a historical high of $409,000 of subsidy to over the average over the last 10 years being $191,000 per year. We've gotten it down to $167,000 for the last 2 years. We do have to continue to focus on shrinking this subsidy for the health of the school future. To be clear, the $167,500 is from your weekly donations, and it's subsidizing St. Mary's School. This graph notes how much the average parishioner gives in donations on a weekly basis. As you can see, 21% of parishioners are giving 69% of the total funds. You can see the different levels, including the largest level at the lower end. On top of that, there's a large percentage that are not even giving at all. Please prayerfully consider increasing your weekly or monthly donations to keep up with expenses and to continue beautiful liturgies, maintain a small but mighty staff, to offer great services, and to maintain our facilities. The trend of donations to St. Mary Church is mostly flat, although you do see a few ups and downs, and it does show an increase for this past fiscal year. Please note though, as noted earlier, the donations were increased prior to COVID, and then they have plummeted since. To expand on that, since the end of this 2019-2020 fiscal year, July through October of this year, we are down $10,000 per month. This is not a sustainable amount to be able to keep up all the great services that we offer. So please look at what you donate and prayerfully consider getting back to where you were or possibly increasing past that. Although the trend of weekly donations is fairly flat, one very encouraging fact is that online donations continue to go up, which is noted by the green bars versus the blue bars, which are cash and check. The reason why this is positive is online donations are a much more efficient way of donating. It's touchless, which has really been even more advantageous during this COVID time. It's also better for budgeting for the parishioner and for the parish because those donations come in regularly. Looking at expense allocation for St. Mary, you'll notice the largest is school salaries and benefits. This allows us to keep a great faculty and staff that leads to year after year excellence in the school. Additionally, you'll see school maintenance of 4% and school administration and other of 7% for a total of 65% of the money going out of our funds. Additionally, you'll note that there's 4% for the church as well as 4% for school maintenance and utilities. And utilities are not cheap. So that shows you that how little we're spending on maintenance. As noted earlier and in building and grounds, our maintenance and capital improvements need to go up to make sure we can keep our buildings excellent. The expense 7-year trend, although it looks fairly flat, does go up a little recently, and that is almost all due to increase in capital expenditures to try to keep our facilities in good working shape. So to summarize St. Mary's financial status, the school income, mostly tuition, almost meets the need for solid faculty and staff. It does take $167,000 on average of subsidy from the parish to be able to pull that off. The income does not meet the need for these aging facilities. On the parish side, yearly income, mostly Sunday donations, meets the need for the solid staff and services. Again, the income does not meet the need for the aging facilities. Additionally, Sunday donations dramatically down since March. We cannot sustain all of these services without making cuts and minimal maintenance and no upgrades unless we see an increase or a bounce back in our donations. This is the last thing we want to do as far as cutting back on maintenance and upgrades because we're already working to catch up from the past. If you'd like to see the full annual report from the Stewardship Commission, which includes additional financials, you can see that at our website at smchp.com.